The internet's ready. The internet will be ready. Okay, there we are. We're live. Hello, kids. We have a lot to talk about today. We're joined by Anthony Mingione, who is with us as well. We have Kevin Allen on a special Tuesday, where we got to pay Kevin $20,000 to come out on a Tuesday. So let's take advantage of him as best we can.
Good luck.
Here we go. So let's Russ, I think we should just jump right into this today, probably because we're running out of time, right?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say to help people out, don't go see the Batman. Don't watch it on HBO Max. Save yourself the trouble. It is the worst representation of Batman in the history of the world.
Really?
It's boring.
I'm definitely going to go see it. I'm definitely going to watch it.
I'm telling you.
I watched it. It was dark. It was slow. It wasn't particularly revelatory. I would, if I had to pay $12 to go see it, I would not. I saw it for free on HBO Max.
Weren't you bored? It was boring.
It was boring. Yeah, I said it was slow. It was boring.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's start.
Probably how Batman's life really is, though. Actually, don't we all think that? I mean, anyway, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and the only thing not boring about the Batman movie was Zoe Kravitz.
I'm Anthony Mingione from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
Russ Cohen, Sportsology.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
And I am The Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. We're going to start with some goings because we got Anthony and Russ here who are, and we have some Flyers news today. And it was interesting. The rumors flying around today and flying around all weekend about what was going to happen. And what actually happened were different, but I've got a theory why they're not. So, but go ahead, you guys. A very interesting. I'm going to say one thing about the press conference. Okay, the Flyers. I mean, I love the Flyers. I always have. The media people are great there. It's not a good idea to let the comments run live on these things on the YouTube press conferences. This was not. I don't know if you guys could see it at all, but it was rough.
I mean, I was there. I couldn't see it.
It was like F-bombs. Who is this effing loser who's talking to us now? This is on Philadelphia Flyers YouTube channel. Scrolling up, just like bad thing. It's really just, guys, think ahead. It's just, this is what you're going to get. This is the internet. That was Fletcher did not, he was not taking a nice, it was not a fun thing to watch. You couldn't watch it with your family, put it that way. It was not like something you could sit there and watch.
It was not a G-rated press conference.
It was not a G-rated press conference. And they're just big comments. They're just scrolling up right next to his head, impossible to miss. But anyway, Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Well, we did get into, we have obviously the official word, which we all expected with regards to Mike Yeo.
Right.
The Flyers would like to keep him within the organization, but not obviously as a head coach. I think that very much will depend on whoever the head coach is that they might hire.
Yeah.
But, it's not a guarantee. I mean, he has, as Fletcher stated in the press conference, they want to have him back, but if he wants to obviously pursue other opportunities, it's certainly understandable in that respect.
Fletcher never really quite answers anything, really.
No, he doesn't, and that's
it's very good. It would be good to have him back. If not, it would be great too.
Not exactly. And my overall take on it was nothing in there that was necessarily revelatory in this circumstance, any massive revelations, other than obviously the fact, with Sam Morin, obviously, which is, obviously who is going to retire because of his repeated knee injuries. Obviously they dug into the previous comments about the aggressive retool, and, Chuck kind of gave his sort of, it's a combination of, if you're looking for the exact direction that the Flyers are trying to go in, I don't believe this press conference gave you any sort of clue with regards to that, other than looking at opportunities. I know Sam Carchidi tried to see if he could get, try to ask about, whether or not the Flyers were going to pursue Giroux this offseason, and obviously it's something.
Well, they couldn't talk about that. That was
discussed, which is interesting that you floated that.
Yeah, you couldn't. You couldn't.
That's what I'm saying.
There's no way you can address that. That was a weird thing Sam's an experienced guy. I think that.
I understand floating it out there to see maybe, but again, Chuck.
You can't float it out though. If he answers one word about it, then he's tampering.
Exactly.
Right.
That's exactly what he stated in his response.
To float that out is just kind of irresponsible.
It was weird. It was weird.
It was a weird question for sure.
I thought.
Russ?
Yeah, I'll let Anthony finish, and then I got like 3 points.
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah. Beyond that, certainly the Flyers are in pursuit of trying to bring over Russian goaltender Ivan Fedotov. They want, obviously, complications are involved, but it sounds like that
the situation in the Ukraine, as he's called it.
Sounds like there is a mutual interest that he wants to come over, and that he would be in competition for the backup role next season. Which, Russell obviously speak the thoughts on that, and the fact that they feel like the adaptation would not be as difficult as you would normally think with a goaltender coming over from playing in Europe. But they seem like they feel like they can bring him in. And to me, that kind of points in the direction of, while they said good things about Martin Jones, I think if you look at Jones and how Jones kind of commented during his press conference, and not precisely, but it seems like both sides looked at, okay, we had a 1-year mutual relationship, and now we're probably going to go our separate ways. So I would anticipate there will definitely be a new number 2 goaltender behind Carter Hart next season. And it sounds to me like the Flyers would very much like for it to be Fedotov.
Yeah, it sounds like it. He's 26, right?
Was there any change to Fletcher's status? I mean, I've obviously been busy.
Nothing addressed to it. He's general manager.
I know he's staying, but I thought he was.
Let me address. I want to address that a little bit, because there was a big rumor flying around there this morning, which was posted by me and a lot of other people too. Told us about it, that he was going to be moved up. And that is. It wasn't asked directly, I guess. I don't know. I didn't hear the whole press conference, but the concept, that Danny Briere would be made GM. I got a denial from Danny Briere halfway through.
He didn't get anywhere near that in the press conference.
No, but I think that what's happening, what I gather from talking to some sources, not Briere or Fletcher, but other sources, is that there could be still changes to come. That the next 2 weeks they're meeting, but they had to meet now to talk to the media. Fletcher's going to still be here.
The evaluation period that he gave, based off of what he stated in the press conference, they were looking at things over the next 6 weeks, Russ, or 4 to 8 weeks is the number. That's the window that they're kind of looking at with regards to the whole organizational analysis. And one of the big questions, obviously, that came up was, the number of man games lost to injury this season for Philadelphia, and the number of injuries, and about players rushing back too soon, such as, Brian Ellis. Kevin Hayes, and how there's going to be, questions have already been asked as to, what differences in approach do we need to make going into next season with the amount of players that were lost to injury this season, especially if you're going to obviously point to injuries being one of the biggest issues. But Fletcher also stated the fact that their issues, obviously, as we all saw, are far more deep than that.
So here's the 3 things. Not to leave Fedotov hanging. Of course, they want him here. And I think he's capable. It's just getting him here, getting him not to accept a bag full of money over in the KHL because he's their best goalie. It's going to be a battle. He was putting it out there, so the player has the intention. They know that they want him, but the player still may want to be a number 1 goalie and still may not want to do it. That's just the reality.
Right.
There's no guarantee that they're getting him. They're hopeful. You can't have a retool with a look at the future. You can't do it. It's a high wire act that they don't have enough time to do it. And here's why I don't think they have enough time. They talked about the coaching search, like Anthony said, but I was asked a very good question on Sirius, and that was, well, haven't they been looking all along? And yeah, they should have been. They should have been back channeling, but the way they corporately presented this was, well, we're going to go through a profile. And after we get through a profile, then we're going to start calling guys. You're behind the game already. There's other teams that could be ahead of you. Yeah. If this is truly your pace at it, it's too slow. And then the other big thing is, and this was a telling thing, even though Fletcher is, much more confident about Ellis, he did say, hey, by July, we'll see where we're at. But that really is the whole direction of the defense.
The whole offseason basically hinges on Ellis' status.
That's not a status you want to hang your hat on.
You have to have a plan A and a plan B. Right. Ellis looks like he's on track, then we can go in certain direction.
I'll just be quick on this. You have to believe that one way or the other that there's going to be a decision made on Ellis by July, because once free agency comes in, if that money is dead money in terms of him being on this being on LTIR the rest of his contract, they're going to have to go in a direction of going out and signing a.
There's also another thing to consider too, Mike, and this is also the health of Sean Couturier.
Yes,
we talked to Couturier obviously on Saturday. He's getting there. He's about to get back out on ice, but there's still sort of a kind of a thing hanging out there with regards to how he's going to be going into next season. And that also, Fletcher sort of mentioned, do we have to look at potentially pursuing a 1C this offseason?
Yeah, Anthony, explain Ellis's knee situation just in case not everybody's up to date on it.
It's beyond just that. It's actually the injury during Saturday. Sam Carchidi was able to kind of suss out from Ellis directly that it's a pelvic issue. It's a pelvic injury, and it's a
multi-layered injury in the pelvic region.
Yeah, multi-layered issue with regards to that. So they've gotten to the point where they know what he feels like he's said to Fletcher, and this is what Fletcher basically said in that this must have, again, this was the impression we were given, is that he gave this information to him shortly before he spoke to us on Saturday.
Right.
That
they're holding off a surgery. They're not going to do surgery. They're
not going to do surgery, and they don't feel that, and that's where they're at right now in terms of now it's going to be a long, quote unquote, a long, hard summer, according to
That's what he said.
The question is whether or not he is in fact going to be ready. So what it comes down to is, again, pelvic injury. We've nailed it down to, but it's a multi-layered issue that affects several. It sounds like it affects several different things. I've had
no projection on length of.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, that's an odd one, though. I mean, have you ever heard anything like that? I don't think I have.
No, the whole handling of this has been bizarre.
And if you wait until July to say, okay, we're going to see if rehab works. This is sort of like the Jack Eichel situation. They waited and waited.
It is a little bit like
except it's not as obviously as acrimonious in the circumstance, and they're behind whatever it is he wants to do.
But if they wait until July, Anthony, and then all of a sudden they say, okay, this is not working, we have to have surgery, he could be out 6 months, and he's out for the first half of the regular season. That's not a situation.
Which is why, again, they also, of course, mentioned how really they talked a lot. Fletcher spoke a bit about Cam York and how he really is going to be kind of a major focal point, I think, of that blue line going forward, especially depending on what the situation will be with Ryan Ellis.
I mean, that's his plan B, and it's not a perfect plan B because he even admitted, hey, we kind of threw him in there this year and he wasn't quite ready. What's interesting about this, and I think Kevin has experienced this a lot in life, Fletcher, the same things he talked about today or almost the same things he talked about when he was hired. That's the issue.
Yep.
They're kind of right back where they were, square one, in terms of going from scratch, in terms of the coaching situation.
Yep.
And they thought they were able to and again, the plan was to accelerate the process from Ron Hextall, and unfortunately they accelerated straight off the side of a ditch, into a ditch, basically.
Here's an interesting, note from Detroit that sort of impacts Fletcher and what he's gone through there. I've heard 1.7 billion names mentioned to the Detroit Red Wings coaching position. Mm-hmm. One of them is not Alain Vigneault. His name has not come up whatsoever here in Detroit. And I have heard everybody from, the Swedish coach Gronberg, there are 8 or 10 AHL coaches. I've heard their names mentioned as well.
He may have reached the end of his coaching life cycle.
People have asked about Mike Babcock. They all kinds of things, and yet I've never heard Alain Vigneault's name mentioned.
No, Scotty Bowman.
I feeling this year that Vigneault just didn't connect with players anymore, and that's a shame. Vigneault's not a bad guy, but I think that Fletcher's issue, in my opinion, is trying to please everybody all the time. I think there's a big part of that to him, and like part of that is giving Yo and Therrien jobs, for example, and that they were highly paid assistant coaches who've been head coaches before, right? And it's just like the dynamic for Vigneault wasn't necessarily fair. I didn't think either. Like I didn't think that was necessarily fair on Vigneault as well. I think that there's a bunch of things, and just that to me has been a problem too. This is a there were not a lot of answers today. There were a lot of talk arounds, and I really get the sense that Fletcher might not be the GM come beginning of the year. And I know that people sit there and say he's still the GM right now.
Well, he's going to be working there.
He's going to be working there, but I think I think the rumor that was flying around may have just been a little bit premature. Put it that way. It might have been the kind of thing. Like, this could be a plan. We're going to meet in a week. Like it comes down to like is Dave Scott going to still be there? You know, like people say he's going to retire. There's a lot of stuff flying around.
Nothing is certain in Flyerland.
Briere did comment to me saying that he's happy working under Fletcher. He's learning a lot from Fletcher, and he's getting that's what I got from him today. You know, but just like. And he thought the rumor was pretty funny that he was already the general manager, because I was supposed to have lunch with him, and I said, "Am I going to have lunch with the general manager next week or whatever?" And he said, "Ha ha ha." You know, I was like, I don't know how the rumor got out there. It's basically what he said.
Before we get into the predictions, I want to talk about some of the last night's
games.
Yeah,
let's talk about last night's games.
Start with the first game, the Boston Carolina game.
Yep.
I know Russ sent me a message about Ronta being shaky early on. I honestly, I think he made a few really good saves and then sort of settled in.
He did settle in.
Yeah, and Carolina, you know, if Carolina at a certain point in the second period just took over the game, and even though Taylor Hall got that goal to make it 2-1, I don't think there was anybody who was worried that Boston was going to come back in that game, Kevin. I thought it was a thorough domination by the Hurricanes.
Well, I mean, I thought that was important to win. You know, we've talked about statements before, and you know, Carolina, you know, for some reason, they're a team that everyone wonders whether they're for real, but that was a very convincing win over Boston. And you know, the theme of the night was, you know, the reminder for all of us who put efforts in trying to figure out who's going to win and looking at all that kind of stuff is there's just a randomness about the NHL playoffs that always comes into effect as soon as we start.
Yep.
You know, it's just a flip of the coin. The NHL today, which I brought up to Act before we came on. Actually, I think it was yesterday they put it out. A statistical guide to what's happened. And all these things that we think, you know, that we believe, like home ice advantage, simply do not bear out over history.
Yeah.
And the lower seed, this is the one that just floored me. The lower seed has won 49% of the time.
That's crazy.
49% of the time. It's almost 50-50.
That's exactly right.
That's nuts.
Yeah. And as Zach pointed out, the team that has won the season series in the first two rounds does have a 58% chance of winning historically.
Yeah.
But until they get to the conference final, in the conference final, they pointed out that of the last 18 conference finals, the team that had won the season series has only won 6 out of the 18 times. So, you know, I guess it just means in early rounds where in theory you have sort of a disadvantage, but the one that got me too is if you go up 1-0, you have a 69 in a series. You got a 69% chance of winning that series, and if you go up 2-0, it goes up to 80.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
But here's the other one too that was just bizarre. That wasn't in the NHL package, but I saw it in someone's tweet. You go up 1-0 in a playoff game, you got an 80% chance of winning. That's actually 79 and change, but. And the reason that came up is for betting, you know, for prop bets.
Right, sure.
So the one thing I took away from this game was, like, Ronta did scare me at the beginning. He was out of the crease. He was a little unsettled, but once he got settled, before he got settled, the defense really got settled. And this is what we kind of expected. And they really clamped down, and with their disruption of play and active sticks, they frustrated the hell out of the Bruins.
Boston,
and that's why. That's the problem for the Bruins right there.
Well,
Boston had the first 7 shots on goal, and then they really, I sort of petered out, I thought.
Here's a question for us to answer that I think is kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Is Jacob Slavin not the best defensive-minded defenseman in the league today?
I think he is. I think you're right.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of the most underrated players in the league today. Like, just like, you know, like,
well, I mean, he might be the most underrated.
Yes. Well, the thing about it is though, we've been talking about him being underrated for 4 or 5 years. Like,
but he still doesn't really get mentioned.
Underrated though. Like, it's not like you see him on any highlight. You know,
No, but you do see him mentioned like in the Olympics when people were filling in their rosters. Everybody said, they put him in first, and then they added in all the other.
But look who the favorites are for the Norris this year. Makar 27 goals.
Yeah.
Yossi over 90 points. It's
but
what I'm saying is we should have a defensive defenseman award.
Well, I mean, that's the argument, but it really should be a two-way thing. Like Yossi is a very good defensive defenseman.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think Makar is getting there as well. So I mean, I've heard the argument, the Rod Langley Award. We've talked about it for years. I'm not so sure that we should divide it. It's supposed to be the top defenseman. So if you're the top defenseman, you should be good at everything.
Well,
we divide it for forwards, Kevin. That's the thing that's interesting to me. Like we do divide it for forwards. We have the best defensive forward. And that's like.
Yeah, but that's because we don't define the Hart Trophy as being for the best offensive player. We defined it as the one who contributes it most to his team. Now, if we want to change that, it's not, that's what you always get in the argument. Is it for the most outstanding offensive player of the year? No, actually, it's not. It's the one who supposedly contributes the most to his team.
The big X factor. Oh, sorry, Mike. Go ahead. You go first.
No, I was going to move on to the next game.
Well, hold on. I have one thing to add.
Yeah.
The one thing that Carolina's been able to do that a lot of teams can't is really put Seth Jarvis in the same role that he was in junior hockey, where he was a goal scorer, and he is able to be a goal scorer with the way they have him set up. They have him set up with guys that play defense.
Yep.
He's fast and he's smart, and it's working, man, because Boston does not have an answer for him right now.
Yeah.
I wonder where they got him from.
Now, if you were watching that game last night, could you convince yourself that Carolina has the best chance against Florida?
Yes.
Not yet, because of the goaltending. No,
not yet. I agree.
Goaltending against Florida, obviously.
I think they can match them forwards and defense, but the goaltending is.
Yeah. Well, I think Anderson's going to be back, so I'm just kind of counting.
I think what I said after the show, I meant to say during the show, but I said it after with these guys right after you logged out, Kevin, was that and this really struck me last night, is this Carolina Hurricane team reminds me a lot of the St. Louis Blues team that won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, they're not physical, but yeah.
There's so many similar, like in that they do things better than you think they do, and they do things that really other teams have no answer for at times. That's what really frustrates. Like other teams don't have a clear cut way to enter the zone against the Carolina Hurricanes. I was noticing that last night.
Well, I'll also tell you, Brendan Moore, the way he works the refs, he has the highest level of engagement in the entire league for that. He will argue with the ref.
One of the best coaches in the NHL. Like
he'll
there's
argue with the ref for 10 minutes over one little impropriety if they give him the time.
Now, I'll tell you this, and this goes across the board for all series, but I'll bring it up because of the game that I watched primarily early on. Anybody who complains about the referees calling the playoffs different than the regular season, they're wrong, because the last night in game one, they called it like a regular season game. There were penalties that I thought were sort of borderline that normally in the past, Kev, they would not have called, and a lot of ticky-tack stuff. And I don't think it really calmed things down, especially in that Toronto-Tampa game, because once it got out of hand, you had Corey Perry and Patrick Maroon running around like a bunch of idiots. And I understand what they were trying to do, but just on that point, and then on the Leaf Tampa game, the Tampa team that I thought and I predicted to win the series really didn't show up, and the Leaf team that Russ thought would dominate did, and they were, killing off a 5-minute penalty, and they got the majority of the offensive chances, Kev. Tampa Bay was so on their heels because they're sending Marner and Kerfoot and McCabe on breakaways and 2-on-1s. It was unbelievable. And the Leafs really played, I think, their best game of the season in game one.
Here's something that I think, before Kevin responds to that, sorry, I'm interrupted, but I know this. Here's something I think that I noticed, and that was obvious. Austin Matthews has gotten a lot better. Right, and he obviously had an incredible year this year, 60 goals. But last night we saw the better Austin Matthews at another level. And it's like if Austin Matthews has another level beyond the 60 goal Austin Matthews we saw during the regular season, then Toronto is a very, very hard out, no matter how you slice it. Like they are a serious threat. Like you're talking about a guy that's up there among the top 2 players in the league, in my opinion, and just right there, But Kevin, thoughts? Sorry.
Well, a couple of things. One is the team that played last night was the same team that I've been warning everybody about for the last month. And then over the last week, it looked like they were starting to get it all together. And I thought, well, maybe they did push the big button and they're able to go down. But that's what I've seen. Like they just looked like different. Like they don't seem to have the same oomph.
Yeah.
And that was, pretty clear last night. And I thought it was really fascinating. I have for years. I've done this radio show in Omaha, Nebraska.
Really?
Yeah, the 2 guys who are hosts there who are Pittsburgh Penguins fans, and every year they bring me in during the playoffs, and I talk about them. And the clip, on radio that they had was Marner doing something in that game, and then pointing out that Marner has gotten the elephant off his back, and something going on. And I'm thinking, if in Omaha, Nebraska, the Marner Austin Matthews situation is a big thing, then maybe it was even bigger than I thought. So
the elephant.
It was an 18-game goal.
Yeah, no, I mean I know what it was, but I was really surprised that was the lead-in of our hockey segment was. Marner getting out there.
I'll tell you something I noticed that I think the Leafs players noticed. I did talk about McDonough being banged up. His speed is compromised, and I think that led to 2 or 3 stretch passes. The Nylander one, I'm pretty sure, was one of them. And I think once the Leafs saw that, they were like, "Listen, we could do this. We could outskate them.
Not skate with them.
Like we have this extra room on the ice that we never used to have."
And when you think about the fourth line that that we saw last year for Tampa, which was such, obviously they lost that whole line, or third line, whatever you want to call it, that line that they lost. And then think about the Maroon Perry Bellemare line, and think about the speed difference between those 3.
Oh yeah, it's not.
That's a fourth, but that's a fourth line.
But it's still 1/4 of your line, one quarter of your forwards were that much lower than they were before.
Wait. When you're matching that up against a line like Toronto has with Clifford, Simmons, who are not exactly speed skaters. Colin Blackwell's a pretty fast guy. I mean, that doesn't really matter as long as the fourth lines are matched against the fourth line. If you get a matchup against them, then it's more impactful.
But the line
they lost, Vasilevsky looked tired on that last goal. He did.
Yeah,
he really did.
The line last year that was completely lost was really their third line, but it really behaved and played like a second line. Like they had 2 second lines, and that's where they're missing the depth. The erosion of the depth is seen in their absence, just because they had 3 big scoring lines.
Now, the difference here, and again, it's one game. It's a 1-game window. I expect Tampa Bay to respond in game 2. Is that I didn't notice Braden Point. I barely noticed Anthony Cirelli. Stamkos had a couple one-timers where he whiffed on it, and Kucherov seemed off. And Vasilevsky had a bad game. So all those things are not going to happen in game 2, and everything went right. The big guys showed up for Toronto. I still think Tampa Bay is an extremely scary team, but maybe you're right. Maybe they're worn out. Maybe they're tired. We'll see in game 2.
They're going to. I mean, they're until you beat them for games.
They'll win some games. They'll win some games, but they're 30 to 40% not the same team, and it definitely shows.
Yeah.
Well, very good team.
And your point about the officiating too. Anybody who saw any of the Edmonton LA game, the ticky-tack calls there, And I don't want to be the old guy that talks about in the old days, they let the boys play, but I kind of miss that in that.
No, you know what? I'm going to go the other way only because if they're consistent with it, I'm okay. Like if all of a sudden it changes and in like 2 games they're not doing it, then I'm right with you, Kev. If they do this throughout, I think they're finally doing what they're supposed to do.
I think that's fair. And there's no harder job than being
oh my God, it's the hardest job.
Especially the speed now.
Well, and the other issue is this. For years, for 136 years, or maybe more, these referees get memos. Like there's the rules and then there's the memos.
Right.
about how they want it called. And it just can't be easy every year. Like I can imagine these guys showing up for game one going, well, what are we doing this year, boys? It's just it's hard on them. But
I believe the NHL loved the fact that goal scoring was up as much as it was this year, and they told the referees they told the referees to keep doing what they were doing. And I honestly think that they want that because they don't want the 2-1 games, they don't want the 1-0 overtime games. And if this is the case, it does benefit teams like Florida. Like there are teams that will benefit from this in a big way, and Toronto in a big way, right?
And actually, you said something yesterday that I poo-pooed a little bit only because I felt like in the playoffs they would reach a different level. Early in the game, when Minnesota had those power plays and couldn't cash in, that cost them
big time. Minnesota looked nervous as hell. I mean, to me, they looked like a nervous team last night, afraid to lose. They were playing like a team that was afraid to lose all year, and they didn't look like that.
Talk about a ticky-tack call. The penalty shot in the first period when it was 0-0.
Oh, that was a horrible call.
I mean, it wasn't even a 2-minute minor, let alone something worthy of a penalty shot.
And then when Fleury makes the save on it, I think, wow, that's the thing. There's the moment that Fleury the Fleury moment, right? That he's going to take, and then Minnesota's just going to ride it. But the reality is, Minnesota played nervous, and they played right into St. Louis's hands. That series is going to be a lot different than that one game.
The great neutralizer, Kev, of because I said Minnesota is tough, they're big, they're physical. If the referees call penalties and St. Louis's power play is as effective as it was, Minnesota's in deep trouble because they need to be able to play physical and not end up in the penalty box.
Well, I think that was part of it. Like I think now going into game 2, teams are going to adjust based on what the refereeing, and I think some of Minnesota's heavier guys like Greenway. He got victimized in that game because that's something that he could have done in the regular season. He was screaming from the penalty box. Well, guess what? You can't. And Fleury's second goal wasn't great, but I still thought he was okay. But if they don't cash in on the power play, they're dead in the water. Like they need to cash in.
Now,
Kevin, I went to thought about this with Fleury because I mean we've talked about this before with him. I believe I think it was you and I talked about this. Fleury, when he's trailing as a goalie, and one of his weaknesses is trying to do too much and over sliding. Like he slides too far, and it happened a couple times with a couple goals last night. Like where you thought Talbot wouldn't have been nearly out of position as much, Fleury gets himself out of position by trying to do too much when his team's behind. I feel like he's got like that as a goalie. You have the damnation of goaltending. I've been a goalie all my life. Is that you can't get your team back in the game. You can only try to keep it from getting worse. But Kev, what are your thoughts on Fleury in that game last night?
He was okay, but not as good as he can be. For sure. So, but I'm not sure that game was decided by goaltending. Even though the Blues goalie, that's just an amazing story.
It is
36 saves. I mean,
although it's not that different from what happened when they won the cup. So.
Different.
It is unique, but like Mike said, it's only one game, and we'll see. I mean, historically, we've seen this before, where teams win the first game and then everybody settles in, and we'll have to see what happens. But it is. We always we know it, but we always tend to forget it, and we always act as if we can sort of realize how this is going to be, and then they actually play one game, and we go all the stuff that we talked about that
just throw it out the window.
I mean, like we talked about the goaltending in Carolina, all that kind of stuff, and then Ranta comes out and he's fine, and we talk about Tampa, and they won 2, and they should know what they're doing, and then they come out and they just weren't good. They were as bad as they ever were. So,
but I do love when the analysis and the mantra of a certain person all year comes to fruition in game 1 of the playoffs, where Mike Smith makes this absolutely boneheaded move with 5 minutes left to go in the third period in a tie game, trying to do too much, like Eck was talking about Fleury, throwing it up the middle, and it allows Philip Deneau to score the winning goal. I mean, I'm sorry, Edmonton should have won that game, and Smith let in 2 bad goals.
That second goal that Iafallo, he had 3/4 of the net to shoot at because Smith was crouching. Eck, I never thought I would say this, but only because I saw this team rally a little bit behind Koskinen this year, I would bring in Koskinen. I think they need to eliminate Smith's stick. I think now, because he also was late getting in the crease a few times, at least Koskinen's not going to do that. And I think, unfortunately, I think he's more stable.
Well, you know, there's this great Jim Bouton book, Tell Your Statistics to Shut Up. But here's the contrasting statistics that I was looking at this morning. You know, we all know down the stretch that Mike Smith was terrific. 9 consecutive wins. Only one game did he give up 3 or more goals.
Yeah.
But he's now lost 10 playoff games in a row. Yeah. Like, do you think that's in his head?
It's got to be.
Yeah.
No.
And you know, the reality was that game was the most exciting game of the night. And it was just when you watched the speed of that game, it was crazy. It reminded me a lot of the LA Kings, like Chicago Blackhawks series from back when, you know.
I stayed up to 1 o'clock in the morning.
I mean, this was like watching an ex-pickleball game knowing he's not going to win.
There you go. So no, but the speed was much faster. But yeah, back and forth was
game?
my pickleball tournament, you know, that we got destroyed in last weekend. But that'll be another story for another day. But the thing about that series is, okay, you know, if Mike Quick is better.
No, not Mike.
If Jonathan Quick is better than any, see, this is the problem. I think Jonathan Quick. I think Mike Richter. I think Mike Quick, and I put it all together in my head. If Jonathan Quick is going to be that good, Edmonton is in trouble, and that's why I picked LA to win the series. Because the reality is, Jonathan Quick goalies can win a series, and especially against teams that are second guessing themselves.
His team believes in him, that's for sure.
And Edmonton is now second guessing themselves, and that's a problem.
Last night he was 2012 Jonathan Quick, and Russ, I have to say,
he's been that for the last couple of months.
The Kings young defense with Dursey, Jordan Spence, Mikey Anderson coming back, they played really well against.
Well, you know, you and I were talking when we were going through our ballot. Bjornfoot's only got like 6 penalties against them the whole year,
right?
And that's a guy who could have made the team 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It is still a game Edmonton should have won, though. But
Edmonton, I still think Edmonton's got a really good shot in the series, and I don't think Edmonton played a terrible game. I think that at the end of the day, you know, LA showed that they can skate with Edmonton, which is interesting because not many teams can skate with Edmonton. But yeah, then LA has like guys like Ole Mott on the team. You're like, what is he still on the NHL types players? Yeah. Like they have these guys like
yeah, I mean, El Guapo's right. Trevor Moore had a great game. I'm sure.
Trevor Moore was fantastic. But you know, really, the thing about Mike Smith is this. We all know that Edmonton's goalies aren't going to win them the Stanley Cup, okay? But Mike Smith, Mike, right? Not John Smith. Mike Smith. Yep. I'm questioning everything now. Mike Smith is going to make that play, Mike. He's going to make a couple of bad plays like that, but he's also going to make several good plays that are outlets that are going to help him.
I don't think you can risk it anymore because, you know, the one thing about the Kings, there's 2 things that they talked – because I've spoken to Kings people a lot over the last few years. They're big about their pace, and they're big about not making mistakes. And if you're going to make a mistake like Mike Smith is going to make, you're never going to beat them, and that's why I would take Smith out.
And
if they win this series, can we not start to wonder if Danault was maybe the best free agent signing in the offseason?
He might have been, and he was matched up against.
He might have been, yeah.
He was matched up against McDavid, and what Woodcroft tried to do is put Yamamoto, Kane, and McDavid on one line, and Draisaitl on another line, and whenever they split them up, it doesn't work. It only works when they put all their eggs in one basket. And the thing is, if you neutralize that line, then you're screwed. So
I'll give you one positive.
I noticed big time was that Nurse is not 100%. And when they pulled their goalie at the end of the game, then they're trying to tie the game up, right? They were showing Nurse on the bench. I don't know if you saw this. Nurse was on the ice, and they're doing the whole like talk about the 6 players are going to be. And Nurse bangs his stick on the board and skates onto the bench. Like Nurse was told he wasn't going to be one of the 6 guys on the ice there at the end of the game. Right. That's big. Like that's a big thing.
Yeah, but I think they can get over that. I will tell you one positive for Edmonton was Evan Bouchard played a really good game. He's turned into a heck of a defenseman.
Yeah. Bouchard, I like him a lot. I do. Any thoughts on this game, Kev?
Are we still talking about Edmonton and LA?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll jump in.
No, I mean, I think we all sort of think that the LA Kings are a team on the rise, but I don't think they're there yet. And their younger players really aren't contributing as much as they will eventually over time.
True.
And yet, we talk so much about how this was a great matchup for LA or for Edmonton, but it was also a great matchup for LA. Much better they face a team like Edmonton who has a lot of flaws than some of the other ones. So this is a good first round series for them. I think probably in the real world it's a pick'em series,
right?
I thought Edmonton had played so well they would take care of business, but that's certainly not the case so far. But the one strength that and I think it was Russ, you brought this up yesterday, is they've got real 1-2 center punch is really strong there. So they ended up with Kopitar, and then a guy that was already in the Stanley Cup final last year, that knows what he's doing. So
he really was something. And Dano was really all right. We got to
be learning something here. What we may be learning is that the Philip Danault kind of player may all of a sudden have been undervalued in this league, and if he is still, if LA keeps advancing, more teams are going to want that kind of player.
Well, but Danault proved in LA that he was more than a checking.
Right. The reason he's getting consideration for the Selke this year is because he scored 27 goals and played great.
Yeah, no, he was something. I mean, he was impressive, and obviously part of why Montreal did what they did last year. When you think about it, it's like this is a big reason why Montreal goes. We knew that at the time, but it's maybe a bigger reason than we thought. All right, predictions. Rangers Penguins. We'll start there. I'll do the quick stupid things. The matchups favor the Rangers slightly. The power plays, Rangers power play penalty kill favor the Rangers pretty dramatically. The Rangers were the 4th best power play. The Penguins were the 19th power play in the league. That's very bad for the Penguins, obviously. The Rangers 7th best penalty kill, Penguins 12th best penalty kill. And then, of course, as my son, everyone loves my son's things. I got some nice text about that yesterday. Park rangers are designed to control animals. Remember, the New York Rangers stand for Central Park Rangers. So
no.
The Rangers
don't have a mascot.
It comes from Central Park Rangers. That's where Rangers comes from, and they're official National Park Rangers. So therefore, the mascots favor the Rangers as well. Russ, but
anybody can control a penguin.
Okay, maybe true. We have joined by Jan at the perfect time here. Also,
Jan, we're talking predictions on Rangers Penguins. So give us your thoughts first.
Give us your quick. We're running low. We're running behind, but
okay, how long do I got?
You got like 2 minutes. Go for it.
All right, so I wrote it in the blog today. So prediction.
Definitely check out Jan's blog for full coverage.
So Rangers in 6 is my prediction. Clearly, Pittsburgh is hurt a little bit by Casey DeSmith, though I don't think that teams are giving him the credit he deserves. He actually went 4-2-1, pretty solid run down the stretch run with a shutout. So while there is a drop off from Jarry, I don't think DeSmith is necessarily like the weak sisters of the poor between the pipes. Where the Rangers do potentially have the advantages up front in terms of offensive talent, though, with names like Crosby, Malkin, Rust, etc. The Pittsburgh is still pretty dangerous, especially if they get Jason Zucker back. They can kind of move Rickard Rakell up and down the lineup if they want to. Lengthens the roster as well. Defensively, I mean, Chris Letang, we all know how good Letang is. I've been touting for all. I think he's a Hall of Famer, despite all the games that are missed. I think Pittsburgh D, as I wrote, is kind of greater than the sum of his parts. It's not an overall great D. It's not a great puck-moving D, but they do a decent enough job in terms of defensively. I mean, I like Marino. Dumoulin is a decent partner for Letang. What Pittsburgh does have is obviously the experience, and also they have the galvanizing factor of kind of one last kick at the cup, because Letang is an unrestricted free agent, Russ is an unrestricted free agent, and Malkin is as well. Right on the flip side for the Rangers, clearly it comes down to the offensive talent. Getting Vetrano, who's a shoot-first guy, which they need, and also getting Andrew Kopp has lengthened the lineup and gives them a solid top 6. What'll be interesting to watch is how the kid line of Hedel, Lafreniere, and Kakko play together. I think Ryan Reeves is probably in just for today to set a tone, but I do think you're probably going to have him swapped out for game 2, maybe for Dryden Hunt. And as the playoffs wear on, if they get Tyler Mott back, that'll be a big add. And then the big key is going to be the line change. When does Pittsburgh get their top 2 lines on against the third pairing of Patrick Nemeth and Braden Schneider? And I don't know how long Nemeth gets in there for. I do think eventually you're going to see Justin Braun play the offside against Schneider, just because he's a much better defenseman, even though he's going to be playing on his offside. And we have the specter of Igor Shesterkin and just how good he's been overall. And if he's as good as he's been during the season, then I do think the Rangers should advance in 6.
I'll be quick here because Jan was fairly extensive. I had the Rangers in 6 as well. I just think that, even though I have a ton of respect for Crosby and Malkin, I mean, I just think the Rangers with Shesterkin in goal can put a cap on that offense, and with Kreider having the year that he has, and Panarin and Zibanejad, and you go on and on. I just think the Rangers are built for the playoffs, and they have the better goaltender. And I think DeSmith can play well, but I think the Rangers are the better team, so I had Rangers in 6.
Russ?
Yeah, I have Rangers in 6.
Okay.
I mean, Kreider's the best power play goal scorer in the league. That's big. Patrick Nemeth is good for a goal against every game he's in there. That's a guarantee. He's a glacier. The fact that Gerard Gallant still hasn't figured out Braun on his offside is better is mind-numbing to me, but he will figure it out because he's going to be at a spot in the game where Nemeth doesn't look good, and he's going to figure that out quick. The Penguins, look, they play hard. Jan was right. Raquel will actually be a very dangerous guy against the Rangers. I think as much as I like Jerry, it's not like DeSmith can't play. And they'll play hard, but I look at it, and I think the Rangers' speed will eventually burn out the hard-working, can't-make-a-mistake Penguins that we see there.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'm taking the Rangers in 6 as well. And really, it's about goaltending for me. I mean, as you know, I get it that DeSmith has played well in the last few weeks, but they had a lot of doubt in him this season. That's not come across before. He was always a guy that they had a lot of faith in. But he seemed to have a crisis of confidence this season, and I think they're a little bit concerned about that, maybe more than a little bit. But and Shesterkin has just been so incredible, like all season long. So I think that's a distinct advantage. The Rangers do have offensive weapons that can at least be in the neighborhood of the Penguins' offensive weapons, and I like their defense better. So I'm going the Rangers in 6.
Yeah, I've got the Rangers at 5. But I think that this Penguins team is solid, but this Penguins team also has been horrible in the playoffs lately. We talk about like Mike Smith in the playoffs. This Penguins team has been terrible in the playoffs lately. Like they really haven't won a playoff series in a while. They are really. I think that with Crosby, it's always they could always do something. Obviously, they could always surprise you, but I just don't see it going very far. All right, moving on then to Calgary, Dallas. The matchup favors Calgary. The power plays favor Calgary. The penalty kill favors Calgary. Cowboys. We're going basing my son's thing with basically Dallas Stars. Mainly we're going off the Cowboy aspect of Dallas there, and versus the actual fact that a Cowboy in a burning brush fire is not going to have very much luck. This goes to the Flames here as well. Okay, so all right, let's go with Kevin first. Calgary, Dallas.
I'm taking Calgary. They're just a much better team all around. Yeah. They do all the little things well. I've talked about this before. They win face-offs. They're hard to play against. And the Stars, I mean, I think there's even a little surprise around the league that they even made the playoffs. But the one thing about Dallas that's different is I think we're still sort of judging them. Maybe I'm guilty of that too, based on the old Stars with Sagan and Ben. That's not the leaders of this team now. It's the younger generation has taken over, and Robertson is a real difference maker. So I like Dallas now. I like the direction they're headed in, but I think Calgary is a real contender here.
Yeah, this is a good guy. I agree. Mike?
I had Calgary in 6. Now, I think they're the better of the two teams. Ottinger has had a good second half for the Stars, but they are a one-line offensive team. It's Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski. Sagan and Ben have not been anywhere close to what they were a few years ago. I think Calgary is deeper, tougher, more talented, and I think motivated, and that's why I have them in 6.
I'm gonna add to the whole thing of basically that I think the one thing that's fun about the series is 2 of the top lines and 2 of the maybe best first lines in the NHL playing against each other. Like these top lines are really, really, really good. Both of them. Ottinger is a little bit of an X factor. Could surprise people. I was really surprised by how good he was down the stretch. He could seal a game or 2, but most 2, I'm still going to say Calgary in 5. I think that this is a Calgary series in general. Russ?
Yeah, I got Calgary in 5. I like Markstrom. I think, I do like Jake Ottinger. I don't see a great offensive barrage other than, Pavelski and Robertson. I don't think Ben and Sagan are still even remotely the same. Ben has really fallen off again. And their defense is good, not great. And I think Calgary is going to just play that really safe, suffocating defense and get points off of the mistakes of Dallas. So
yeah. Jan, what do you thought?
Yeah, I think also I'll take Calgary in 6. I mean, I think as you mentioned, Dallas is I don't know if it's a full one-line team. If Dallas didn't have any shot besides Ottinger, you're gonna have to see Miro Heiskanen kind of turn back the clock and be the guy we saw in the playoffs a couple years ago, and also with Klingberg as well. For Calgary, I mean, we talked about the first on Kachuk and Lindstrom and Gaudreau, just how good he's been in terms of especially even strength. Gaudreau has been absolutely unbelievable. They've made do with Sean Monahan doing nothing and being out for the rest of the year. The guy that's probably been the biggest surprise, in my opinion, has been Noah Hannafin on the blue line for them. He's had actually kind of a pretty magical season, and that trade has been pretty tilted. It's amazing how good Carolina's been with that trade being fairly tilted towards Calgary in terms of the guys they got in that deal coming over from Carolina in that trade. But I do think Calgary is the better team overall. I mean, Ottinger, I think, could steal a game, but I don't think he can steal a series against Calgary.
That's where I'm at too. All right, Florida, Washington. The matchup favors Florida. The power play favors Florida. Florida's power play 5th best in the league. Washington's 23rd best in the league. The Capitals, for all you Ovechkin power play power, 23rd best in the league. Penalty killing Florida, number 1 in the NHL. And for Washington, number 13 in the NHL. A Panther versus a politician, my son said, is not a battle at all. So basically, a Panther will take apart any politician unless that politician can somehow, kill its habitat. But that was the only thing he had issues with. But so far, lately for Florida, with the wildlife corridor opening up in Florida, the politicians have been nicer to the Florida Panthers in general. So we're going to say that the Panthers are going to take that with that part of it as well. I'll start with this one real quick. I just think that this is one of the best offensive teams we've seen in a really long time. And this is not one of the best defensive teams we've seen in a really long time in Washington. like they're good. They have a good defense, but they don't have great goaltending. Their forwards aren't that great defensively. They're going to have a hard time hanging with the Panthers, I think, in this series. I really do. I think the Panthers they've been through a lot. They've gone through the Quenneville thing. They've gone through stuff this year that have made them a real solid mental team. And I don't think they're going to be shook by the Capitals. Even the Capitals would like to win a game. And from what I heard, Ekblad is looking fantastic in practice, and everything's going to be good there. That's also really big too. Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, I'm taking Florida as well, and it's just the goaltending matchup. I mean, the Washington goalies, I looked this up yesterday, and 15 starts in April, they were, like below 900 save percentage.
Yeah.
I guess wrong on the goalie. I thought it would be Samsonov, but I could see that Vanacek is going to be there.
Yeah.
Their goalie. And he played Florida once and didn't, did okay with them. I think that's why he's starting. But Florida's offense is just so dynamic. And, we don't talk enough about the impact that Giroux has made down there. 23 points in 18 games.
It's massive,
Yeah, he's really, really given that team even making it even more dangerous than it already was. And Ekblad is the key. Now that he's back and you sort of pencil him in playing half the game, they're much better defensively than they were.
Giroux is also a really big game player. He's a great playoff player. That's another thing that, I think you'll see in certain situations. Russ?
Yeah, the other thing about that Giroux-Barkov line, there's no other line in the league where you could have a guy facing off on the right and the guy facing off on the left, and there's no drop-off. Yeah. And that's where they kill teams, because they're both two face-off sharks. Bob is Bob. I think he'll be okay. Yeah. If not, I like Spencer Knight, so I don't think there's an issue there. Interesting about Ovechkin already is putting out the propaganda saying, I could have played in any of the last 3 games. I'm sure he could have. How good's he going to be? That's the question. I mean, I'm sure he's going to wear a harness or something, and I'm sure his shot will go off, but I don't know how great. The interesting thing is one of the guys who's the X factor for them is Garnet Hathaway. He scored goals in weird times this year, and if you look at the playoffs, you don't expect to talk about Garnet Hathaway. I'll talk about him, but I'm still going Panthers in 6.
Yeah, Jan.
So I agree with everything that's said. I mean, first, I think the NHL has finally realized just how good Jonathan Huberdeau is. I mean, we've talked about it for a while, and he took that major step forward. And with all the focus that goes on to Huberdeau and to Barkov, then you also have Duclair. And then the guy who, in my opinion, is probably going to have another big series is probably Mason Marchment, who's probably stamped himself in terms of a pretty solid regular in the NHL this season. So, I mean, he's the kind of guy that I think I wouldn't call him an X factor. And then, as you've talked about, he talked about, the disparity in net between the two. And we talked about Pittsburgh making the last dance. Well, I mean, I think Washington may be getting towards the tail end of the run that we saw for you. Even though the guys are back, they're getting older and starting to wear down a little bit.
2 words: Dennis Malgin, Russ. No, in that series,
Sorry, Mike, I set you up there nicely for that one.
Thank you. I teed it up. Boom! I just hit it out of the park. Panthers in 5. The one thing about this series, very few teams do I think that Tom Wilson won't have an effect on, and Florida is one of them.
Good point.
Because guys like Marchment and guys like Lomborg and their physical players in Sherratt will not take his crap. They'll either annoy him to take stupid penalties, or he'll do something, or Sherratt will confront him physically. I think Florida is better in every aspect of the game now that they have Ekblad back. The goaltending, I'm a little worried about Bobrovsky, a repeat of last year. Remember, he was out of there after, I think, game 2.
Yeah.
Tampa, and then they went to Dredger, and then they went to Knight. And Ovechkin, I think he's honestly, and this is only my suspicion because I saw the play that he got hurt. I think he separated his shoulder. I think he's playing with one arm. He can still be effective. He can go to the front of the net, but if if his shoulder is screwed up, then he's not going to be able to do one-timers, and we know how much of a weapon that one-timer on the power
is so important to that team.
So Panthers in 5.
Hey, before you start, Ek, I got to run. I got a 2:00 interview. I'm taking Colorado in 5.
Okay, thanks, Kevin, so much.
Right.
I really appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, getting on to this series. Nashville, Colorado. The matchup favors Nashville, who won 3 of the 4 games in the regular season. The power play favors Nashville, who was the 6th best power play, or Colorado's 7th, so it's pretty close. The penalty kill favors Colorado, 2nd best penalty killing team in the league. One of the really interesting things when I was doing this that I really do think is worth mentioning for a second, now that we can slow down a little bit, is the top 4 teams on the penalty kill this year: Florida, Colorado, Carolina, and Toronto. I mean, you're talking about a statistic that leads very strongly to the top to 4 of the top teams in the NHL. You can see, like sometimes some of the power play teams that are up there aren't necessarily that that dominant. But these are the 4. If you can kill penalties, you're going to be a good team. Is what and you keep going on. Minnesota's 5th, Calgary's 6th, the New York Rangers are 7th, Tampa's 8th, St. Louis is 9th. I mean, you're talking about the best teams in the NHL here. These are the teams, and the best penalty killing team, best teams in the NHL are the best penalty killing teams in the NHL right now, and that is something that I think is majorly important, especially if this is going to be called like the regular season, if there are going to be that many penalties, like we talked about. I don't think it will be the whole time. I think it'll mellow out, but I think right now, the first couple of games, it'll definitely be. All right, Nashville. As far as Sabertooth Tigers were Ice Age animals, and so not really too afraid of avalanches. So that favors the Predators. There you have it. And I will let Mike start.
Colorado in 5, better in every aspect of the game. The goaltending of David Riddich, I think, is a killer. Maybe they steal a couple more games, maybe make it 6 if Saros is in that, but it doesn't sound like Saros is going to be in there. I'm not taking anything away from the Preds. They had a better than expected season, but I think they're outclassed in this series. So I have Colorado in 5.
Okay, Russ.
Nobody has any guts on this panel. I'm going to say it's going to be a sweep for the Avalanche. I think when the Avalanche figure out in the first game and they go up like 2-0 that David Riddich isn't very good, and Nashville's going to have to circle the wagons just to be able to play some sort of defense. I don't know what that's going to leave left for their offense. And if I'm Colorado, I just, you want to talk about pucks to the net, shoot 50, 60 pucks to the net. You'll win the game.
All right. I have been so, as I told you guys yesterday, mentally distraught about this series. I usually get a really good feeling on a series. I usually can see where it's heading.
Are you feeling vibrations? Like what's the feeling?
In this series, I can feel 2 distinctive futures. Like I can feel like there's 2 paths.
Are they good vibrations?
They are. And but I'll say this. I believe that Saros will be back in game 3. First of all, talking to people down there. He'll be back for game 3, which is big. Now, whether or not he's 100%, that's huge as well. But I'll tell you this much. My prediction is they won't play him in game 3 because they would have won one of the first 2 games, and they'll hold off and play him in game 4 because I think Riddich will get inside Colorado's head. This is not a good matchup for Colorado.
Oh my God!
Please,
somebody clip this. Please save this.
Yesterday, you guys said the same thing to me about LA. By the way,
no. But you have topped yourself. This is the most ridiculous thing you've said on the show in a long time.
No. Say more ridiculous.
He said more ridiculous things yesterday.
I say more ridiculous things in my sleep. All right. So no, but this is the thing. Colorado should be playing Dallas. The whole thing fell apart, and the universe fell apart like at the last second there in that game against the Coyotes, where Nashville has the 4-0 lead in the first period, cruising along, and then blows it on Gostisbehere goals. The universe did not want Colorado to play Nashville, and yet here it is. Colorado would have taken apart Dallas, no questions asked. Calgary would have probably taken apart Nashville, no questions asked. I would say they would have taken apart Nashville.
Heck, what is David Riddich's goals against in the playoffs?
I have no idea.
10.85.
That's a good number.
Here's a clue.
667 save percentage.
You're talking about one game.
One game is enough.
Yeah, one game is not enough. Come on, that's one game.
In Calgary, when Riddich and Mike Smith split time a few years ago, they went with Mike Smith in goal. That's how bad David Riddich is.
David Riddich, the other night against Colorado, looked good.
In a game that meant nothing.
Colorado is bringing in a bunch of guys now who are all healthy again, right? At the last, bring him in, and the night's the night. Then Nashville has to do something. Like, to me, Nashville has this. Right. Nashville has to win tonight. Okay, now, if Nashville wins tonight, Nashville will win the series in 7. And I'm going to go with that.
If they lose tonight,
they'll lose the series. But I'm going to predict they're going to win tonight, and they're going to win the series in 7. Okay. And that being because I just think that Colorado is such a strong favorite. The goalie's out, everything's leaning against, and the Predators are a team that historically loves to be in positions like this.
Even this year, Eck, regular season, which I know you love those stats, Riddich has a .357 goals against and an .886 save percentage.
Yes, no, he has been awful at times, and the reality is
-8.9 GSAA, -8. You're better off taking somebody out of the stands and using them.
No, that's silly. He's not a terrible backup. He's an okay backup.
Mr. David Ayers.
Listen, and obviously, in the crazy thing is, if they play him against Arizona, they don't get Colorado. But I think the Predators wanted Colorado, and I think that deep down that's why they lost that game. I think that they knew after playing, because the last 2 games of the season that they played before Arizona was Calgary and Colorado. They played against each of them. Calgary was a war. We all saw it. It would have been a great series. It would have been fantastic. Colorado does not like playing wars like Nashville does. Nashville is going to be intimidating to them. They're going to be problems. And Colorado is a fragile team until they win. They are a fragile team right now.
I'll say this: if Tanner Jeannot takes out Nathan McKinnon,
yeah, sure,
then they have a chance.
They're a fragile team. And what we saw last night was clearly one of the things that we saw in both the Toronto game and the Edmonton game were fragile teams. Fragile teams do not like being favorites. Like the Oilers, one of the best things when I was watching that game last night, I'm like, why didn't I realize that one of the best things that could happen to Maple Leafs was for them to be underdogs for everybody.
Right. And Toronto, Tampa Bay is the favorite in that series.
Right. So that's the best thing that could have happened to Maple Leafs because of all the crap they've gone through. If they were the favorites again.
That's fine, but that's a different situation than this.
Right.
No, but Colorado, again, the team
Colorado wants to be the favorite.
But they've been disappointing in the playoffs. The last couple years.
Round, it's always in the second round that they're disappointing.
I know, but still, it's still disappointing. Still disappointing playoff performances. They're a team that everybody expects to at least get to the 3rd or 4th rounds of this thing, and if not win it. Right by now, they should have won it. People are talking about is their window closing? There's weird things.
How is their window closing?
Well,
Ken Danica the other day on I heard.
Okay, if you're going to go with what Ken Danica says,
that talk is crap because what he's saying is because Nazem Kadri is leaving in free agency, that means the window is closing. It's a load of shit. That's what it is. I'm sorry.
I agree. I wish Kevin had been here to help defend me. But
they have Alex Newhook. Trust me, they're not going to miss Kadri that much.
Right.
They'll miss him, but not that much. Heck, they have a great farm system too. Ken Danico, unfortunately, does not know that.
well, no, and listen, I'm not saying that Ken Danico is the all-knowing is an all-knowing being. All I'm saying is that they quote unquote the media are saying these kind of things and putting them into the universe that like the window is closing. They're going to kill the Predators. I've heard people say, "Oh, it's going to be a 3-game series." It's like things like all this stuff is just the Predators are the perfect underdog. They always have been. They're an underdog franchise. They're an underdog team. They are perfect in this situation. This is when they thrive, and we are going to see a very, very scary series for Colorado. I am not comfortable making this prediction.
If they lose a game, you're going to say it's scary for Colorado.
No.
No. Yes, you will. The way you've built this up, yes.
You guys were ripping me last night with LA Edmonton too, though. I'll just say that
Sorry. Did we expect Mike Smith to get the puck and put it on a diagonal basis right across the crease, right out in the open? Did we expect that? No.
You probably should have. I mean, he's done it enough. I mean,
not like that. That was brutal.
No, I agree. And listen, but I like I said before, Saros is a much better goalie. There's no choice about it. He's going to get back, and if he gets back, and they can keep this series even, if it can be 1-1 when he comes back, or if it can be 2-1, in favor of the Predators when he gets back, then this is an inch. So I am saying Nashville in 7. That is right.
We end the show. I have another show I have to do.
Okay. All right. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Remember, you have to play these games, and remember what you heard here today.
I'm the all-knowing.
We'll talk.